Extraordinary stories on Sky Documentaries, powered by Jaguar.
"70 years ago, something special started. Formula One. Man and machine in perfect unison. Pushing each other to their limits. Supported by teams, aiming for that top step.
Well, the name of the game is winning.
Seeking perfection. The road hasn't always been smooth. We've marveled at great moments. Had smiles brought to our faces. Cried with our heroes. Witnessed incredible bravery and terrible sadness. Moments never to be forgotten. For 70 years, this has been their Everest. This is what makes them special. This is the story of Formula One.
Good fun. We will have good fun from now on.
Maybe we fight outside the car.
No, I think it's gonna get more and more exciting, the championship.
Is it possible to be equal in the championship?
No. Can only be one winner. Anyway.
The psychology of a racing driver is a big part of his performance. I always said 70–80%. It's very subjective, but it's a big part. And as soon as you feel that you have a sort of advantage or sort of preference, or, I remember very well once I've seen the engines coming, and was written on the engine special for Ayrton, things like this. What does that mean? Is the engine better, or maybe it's exactly the same, or I don't know. But you don't want to see that. You want to have equal treatment, and inside the team it started to be a point. It was only psychology, But for me, I did not feel very well, and I felt a big difference between '89 and '88, and I still do not understand why.
It was a very emotional time, because when you've got a Prost and a Senna next to one another in the same team in a really, really good car, you're always going to have all these emotions and thoughts, and everything's going to be at a peak all the time. So there's going to be very little measured thought about anything.
If you find yourself in the fortunate position of having two highly competitive drivers, they're going to be a handful. There's no question. And especially if they're coming from very different cultures. They would say lots of things in the national press that would inevitably feed back, because the French would get all the Brazilian newspapers and vice versa. They'd come to a Grand Prix and then they would say, Prost said this in France, or Senna said that in Brazil, and then the whole thing would erupt again, of no speaking and no cooperation, etc., etc. But what a wonderful problem to have.
In Japan, Prost was comfortably ahead on points, but I think we have to remember that Senna had actually won more races that year, so knowing Ayrton, that would always have rankled him, that he hadn't had the finishes that Prost had in the points. And in the midst of all that, I think Prost has to be given credit for being the more measured of the two at that time.
The people went to see a race knowing that McLaren was going to win, and they were going to be able to watch the best two drivers of the world battling each other on equally identical cars.
It was certainly a rivalry like I haven't seen, and that was the day it came to a head.
Ron was the first to insist that we let you drive, but please don't do anything stupid, don't run into each other. Think of all the workforce that we have helping you to be there and so on.
Ego and ambition are very, very close bedfellows. And very often people will misunderstand the intenseness that you bring to your ambition, and it will look very often that you have a ginormous ego. And people will never give you the benefit of the doubt. And anyone that achieves in life, in my opinion, has that fine line. It's a fine line. There's instances where there's it's on the edge of or over acceptability, and then you've got to take difficult decisions.
Prost who took the lead at the start against all expectations. For the first 10, 15 laps, kind of disappeared into the distance. And I'm sure at that stage Senna must have been in shock.
I really had a perfect car. I was doing what I wanted to. I was really putting him a little bit away, and I was much quicker. There's no question about that.
Prost had taken the gurney flap off pretty much last thing. He reckoned, therefore, his car would be quicker in a straight line, and that was going to work for him, and it did.
Ayrton was so upset, and he said, whatever happened, if we're going to get together, I'm not going to slow down. So he was just adamant that something was going to happen.
And I said to them, that's the last race. I'm not going to open the door anymore. You know, I mean, I prefer to lose the championship, you know, but I'm not going to open the door anymore.
Well, it's going to be constant attack, because Senna has got everything to gain and nothing to lose. Alain Prost can see the McLaren Honda of Senna big in his mirrors.
Senna reeled him in. And it was obviously going to come down to a showdown, and the showdown was obviously going to be at the chicane because, you know, it's the only passing place at Suzuka.
During the race, and that means to say that Prost has won the World Championship.
There was no question that Alain turned into Senna, no question. What he didn't do was do it well enough to take Senna out the race.
Prost did absolutely the right thing to shut the gate, in my view, because A, the championship position he was in, because the worst that was going to happen was they'd both be taken out, and B, it wasn't a place where it was going to get him anyway, unless he was, unless Prost was making it easy for him.
It was such a bad race for us because we got there, we were quickest in practice, quickest in qualify. We did our job. We put the cars first and second in the grid. We were leading the race, and then end up with nothing on your hands. It's just, it was very disappointed, to say the least.
I did actually walk back down to the pits with Prost, so I was the first person to speak to him after the incident. I remember all Alain could say was, I couldn't believe he did it on that lap. I just, because there had been laps when he'd actually been closer than that, and he hadn't tried it. And he said, and I looked in my mirrors coming up to the chicane, saw where he was, and kind of thought, well, you know, he ain't going to try it this time. But he did. He came rushing down the inside, and of course they touched.
The problem with the drivers is that when you're sitting in that car, you put the visor down, you think of nothing but winning the race or do the best you can. And those kind of movements aligned to Ayrton, like Schumacher have done many times in his career. They came instantly. They do it because that's what they do it. You don't do that, you're not a racing driver. So it's something that no matter how much you tell the drivers, it happened and it will happen again.
I couldn't blame Prost too much. I thought, well, You know, if I was a team manager and I saw Prost not close the door, I'd be a bit disappointed in him. I thought it was an understandable defensive move. And probably, effectively, Senna should have seen it coming and not put himself in that position.
You know, we'd seen various times during that year when Prost had given Ayrton a bit of room to avoid a shunt, and maybe Ayrton had done the same thing. But on this occasion, a championship decider, there's no way Prost was going to do that. And I don't think Ayrton took that into account.
But I remember Katie Rosberg saying, I said, well, did you think Prost did it deliberately? He said, I think so, yeah, because he did it so badly. He said, you know, Alain Prost never turned in on anybody in his life. When he did do it, he said, you know, everybody thought, you know, it wasn't subtle, it was obvious. Be that as it may, Mario Andretti's point was the right one, that if Prost hadn't been there, Senna would never have made that corner on that line at that speed. He would just have gone straight on into the escape road.
Everybody would think what they want to, you know, even run. But he was going so fast behind that, I mean, I did not see him. I was looking at the mirror, he was quite far. And then when I turned and I looked at him, I could not believe that he was there. But obviously, I didn't change, and I didn't do another turn. I didn't change. I've done exactly what I told them I was going to do. But honestly, I'm very disappointed about this race. You know why? Because I did not win it.
He went out the escape road back onto the track rather than what the Jean-Marie Balestre and the FIA said at the time was he should have turned around and rejoined where he'd left the track.
Senna has got going again. He's back on the track.
And Senna is still leading. Senna with this twisted nose cone.
The bit that just made me explode was the fact that the whole thing was manipulated by Jean-Marie Balestre. So Senna came back onto the circuit and basically, brackets, did not enter the circuit at the point of exit. They deemed that he should have turned round, driven against the traffic and entered at the point of where he exited.
I was in that race, but as always, when you've got your crash helmet on, you're driving your own car, you don't notice a whole lot about what's going on around you unless you gain some positions. Ayrton had his brain engaged fully in Suzuka 1989. Instead of thinking, I'm out of the race, he's like, how do I get back in this race? Get the marshals to push me. Get me back in this somehow.
He did a lap with the nose hang off, came into the pits, we changed the nose on the car, and he went out, called up everybody and won the race.
Ayrton Senna wins in Japan. Is there going to be a steward's inquiry? Alain Prost will have one if he can.
Irrespective of all the evidence that we presented at the Suzuka and afterwards in the appeal, Balestre was just saying, there is no way, Alain, no way that I'm going to let Senna win that race. That was the bit that I was upset about. The accident, look, they're competitive. A sense of injustice just drove into me. And, you know, it was just so unjust. But it's not unusual in Formula 1. Things like that happen.
You know, the problem with Ayrton, he can't accept that, he can't accept not to win, and he can't accept that somebody resists by overtaking maneuver. And a lot of times, if you remember last year and this year, I opened the door, and if I did not open the door, we would have crashed like this. And I said before the race, if that happened, I don't open the door anymore. The way he drives is very good, I must say. He's absolutely unbelievable quick. But for me, I mean, it's driving too hard. I mean, you know, it's and if you have two drivers like this in Formula 1, then you have accident every race. Ayrton was very, very strong in his head, very, very strong, unbelievable. But then we started something that we could not control, and until the point where if you go to 1990, 1 year after, you can see that he did not forget, but he had his strong idea. And that was absolutely not objective, not objective.
Japan is a place where I have the biggest number of fans after Brazil, and it's a special atmosphere here, and championships have been decided here over the past few years, and hopefully another one will be decided here. In our business, the pressure, the stress is high, the demand is high, and your mental conditions are fundamental for you to maintain equilibrium, particularly at critical moments.
12 months later, by now Prost was at Ferrari, and Ayrton just had him in his sights.
It's kind of ironic that a year after what happened at Suzuka in '89, it came to Suzuka again with Senna and Prost, championship contenders.
It may not be necessary to win the race myself, to win the championship. So if I cannot win, I hope Gerhard can win the race for the team. And hopefully I can have just the result that it takes for the championship.
If you carry on to the next year, Senna was aggrieved because of the cars starting on which side of the track. He'd qualified in pole position, but felt like he was disadvantaged with the way the grid was arranged, and he wanted that to be changed.
Before we even started practice, I went to the stewards. I told them pole position was on the wrong side of the circuit, and pole position has much less traction, and no matter whoever is on pole will not reach the first corner first. And please change it over before practice.
Ayrton was vehement in his belief that the pole should be on the clean side of the grid. And obviously that meant the French driver being on the dirty side of the grid.
Senna felt like they were targeting him or whatever, you know, blessed French, Prost French, and all that sort of thing.
I think the stewards agreed that they should swap it around. Balestre actually overruled that, and Ayrton took that as a personal thing, and it kind of ignited then the whole Prost-Senna dynamic in his mind.
And that meant that, you know, Ayrton wasn't going to get to the first corner first. He realised that, and he said, well, if I don't come out of the first corner first, I won't be coming out the first corner. That's what he told me.
And Senna sprints away, but Alain Prost takes the lead. It's happened. Alain Prost has taken the advantage. Senna is trying to go through on the inside, and it's happened immediately. This is amazing. Senna goes off at the first corner, but what has happened to Prost? He has gone off too. Well, that is amazing, but I fear absolutely predictable.
You remember in Suzuka they had the monitors very high up in the screen, and we were all looking at the monitors. And I had my fingers crossed. Let's stop this race, get this spare car and start it again. And he come that I had to come, and he said to me, "They're not going to stop the race, are you?" And I said, "No, I don't think so." But inside me, I wanted to stop the race.
I was just so bitterly disappointed in Ayrton because we shared values and principles right through our relationship and our period of working together, and that wasn't acceptable to me. And in the end, he wasn't happy with the outcome, but it, for me, predetermined.
Unfortunately, it went wrong on the first corner. There was a big risk. I had nothing to lose on the first corner. I want to win, and I went for a gap in inside on the first corner. Alain didn't see it and just closed the door, and we ended up touching. That's too bad for the championship because I'm sure the race would have been full of excitement. But last year I lost in a similar manner towards the end of the race instead of the beginning, and this year went wrong for him.
I saw him on the left and with plenty of space and say, okay, I take the normal line just to exit better, and then he overtook me.
Thinking now, it's amazing. If a driver did that today, he'd lose his license probably.
Ayrton, on the first corner, just simply took him out. And then subsequently admitted, quite a while later, that yes, he had done it deliberately, and it was, you know, what he considered to be retribution.
Not the best.
To do what happened, you have to stay flat. And to stay flat, it is something that you cannot imagine in the brain of the racing driver. I went to see his race engineer, the Honda race engineer, to look at the telemetry. Everybody knew that. Everybody knew that. They all saw what happened.
In fact, some of the people in McLaren told me that he never lifted on the throttle until they were stationary in the gravel trap. So.
And then after, when the thing came down, I said to Ayrton, that was wrong, you know, you could have beat him without having to do that.
One of the low points of Formula One, really, and Ayrton's career, it was putting drivers, marshals, fans at risk with this manoeuvre, and it was completely out of control. It's a great paradox with Ayrton. He was the most caring driver. If another driver had a crash or an incident, he'd be the first one at the medical centre or getting out of his car and running back to help Eric Bernard in a Ligier. But at the same time, he was ready to run you off the road. I saw it in Formula 3 when we were bitter rivals, and I saw it in Formula 1 too.
He's a fantastic person, fantastic race car driver. He's a friend, and sometimes friends do things that disappoint you, but they're still your friend. So just draw a line under that one.
Extraordinary stories on Sky Documentaries, powered by Jaguar.
For Rolex and motorsport,
and away we go!
It began in 1935.
Bluebird is burning up Daytona again.
Championing the legendary races from Le Mans to Melbourne, and the drivers who test the limits. Continuing to move motorsport ahead.
Listen up, Britain. Love Honey's at your service. Because who doesn't want better sex? So if it's your first sex toy tingle or your next bedroom buzz, we've got it all. It's time to say yes to more yes and turn up the turn on.
At Wren, we don't just make kitchens, we make jealous mothers-in-law. Children who are seen and not heard. Children with a little bit of abracadabra. And somewhere to kip for them, her, him, and whatever that is. With Wren's expertise, you get so much more than just a kitchen.
Meet Hair Food by Garnier Ultimate Blends. Our way to nourish hangry hair. Our vegan formula, 98% natural origin. Superfood for super hair. 3-in-1. Conditioner, mask, leave-in. For healthy-looking, shiny, super hair. Dig into Ultimate Blends Hair Food. Nourishing or smoothing. By Garnier, naturally.
As the boss of Betfred for the last 50 years, our philosophy has always been bet to your pocket, be gamble aware and keep it fun. If you feel you have a problem with gambling, please contact the helpline on 0808 80 20 133. Don't be afraid to ask. Alternatively, you can go online and click onto begambleaware.org for advice. And remember, bet to your pocket, keep it fun, and please gamble responsibly.
Give yourself a Diet Coke break.
Dinner, a constant struggle. With HelloFresh, dinner is different. Delicious meals that everyone enjoys. Order at hellofresh.co.uk. Dinner solved.
شكرتكم شديدا أننا كنا تعبانين شديد بكلام مويا في هيدا كله كنا تعبانين شديد سنين ده كله نرجمكم مركو ده بعيد طبعا.
A great night's sleep means a greater day ahead. And as we move forward with a new way of living, getting a good 7 hours is as important as ever. That's why Benson's are offering up to 50% off beds and mattresses, so you can wake fresh and focused, ready to embrace every day. Search Benson's or visit your local store. Sleep well, stay well.
This rich, smooth, yellowtail Shiraz deserves a longer advert. Cut to the taste.
It had been a really tough, emotional year. We'd lost Ayrton, we'd lost Roland Ratzenberger, and we all wanted that season to end. Adelaide again was the deciding race in the championship. We had Williams on the recovery, we had the Damon Hill fans, the Michael Schumacher fans, and polarisation in Formula One was something relatively new. I think it kind of began with Senna-Prost, but now we had it again, and I think the British knew on what camp they were following, and certainly there were the Michael supporters as well, obviously. And a lot of them wound up with Michael, you know, just this new star, this total megastar.
The championship was on the line right into Adelaide, and we felt a lot of grievance because of the things that had been going on that year. I mean, and we felt there'd been occasions when results had been taken away from us unfairly. Michael was the utmost professional of his era. He was a pretty misunderstood character. And I don't know if in his own mind he quite enjoyed the sort of impression that he created, because he was quite an intimidating character in many ways. But if you knew him personally, he was quite the opposite. Very engaging, very personal. So many times I introduced him to people who, before they met him, thought he was despicable, horrible character. And you introduce them, and once they got to know him, they completely changed. I had that happen so many times.
A lot of pressure on you, do you feel?
I think not as much as on Damon. I'm looking forward to fight for the championship, and if I can win the race, I'm going to try to win the race. If it is going to be second place and I still be champion, I don't mind about this. And I mean, the important bit is to get the championship.
I just hope tomorrow's kind for everybody. It's kind for the sport, for Formula One, for these two great drivers to get themselves in a position to challenge for the World Championship when it comes down to the last round. I just hope that the best driver, the best car and the best race on the day, the person wins.
The fact remains that Michael and I are pretty close on the grid. He has the advantage, and of course I have to get ahead of Michael tomorrow. That's only my only concern, and there's no pride in playing dirty tricks in Formula One, and it's not necessary to do that. And I think that it would be a shame and not satisfying for everyone if that was to occur, and I don't expect that to occur.
I think he regarded me with a slight degree of disdain. I think he would prefer to have been racing Ayrton Senna or Nick Hakkinen or someone else. If Michael Schumacher was the greatest racing driver that ever lived, then I didn't do too badly against him. But we didn't know at the time. We didn't know at the beginning of his career. In fact, Ayrton didn't know. Nobody knew quite where this guy was going to end up.
In the race start, of course, Michael took off, but Damon was just great. He hunted him down, and he proved that he was the guy on the day who was going to win that championship, and he looked to be all over Michael. The only way then that it was going to go wrong would be if it ended in tears and they clashed, and that was exactly what happened.
It was classic Michael. He'd gone off the road, out of view from Damon, and his computer kicked in, and he immediately realised he was out of the race. Damon hadn't spotted the contact with the wall, and I think Michael just gave Damon the opportunity to drive into a wedge that was going to disappear. Championship done.
If you look at the incident, on a left-hand bend, which was soon followed by a right-hand bend, Michael had hit the wall and was actually driving off to the left up the escape road, and he wasn't on the escape road, but he was heading up the escape road when he saw Damon coming by, and Damon had every reason to think that there was a gap. It was more than a gap. Michael was literally driving off the track, and he turned round to the right and literally drove straight. It was the most blatant driving into another car that you could possibly imagine. And sadly, one of the legs of the front wishbone failed, so there's no way Damon could carry on.
I mean, Michael had gone off and come back on the track. We can't be sure how damaged his car may have been, but he blocked Damon. You know, from Damon's perspective, if he'd hung on a second, he would have got past quite easily, but he went for a gap that Michael could defend, and that's what happened.
I think the way that karters approach their championships and approach racing was a surprise to me, which is why I went for the move and wasn't expecting what was going to happen. If I'd done more karting, I probably would have looked at this situation differently.
Damon blames himself because he said, I know what a ruthless he is, I shouldn't have given him the opportunity. And Michael, well, ruthless squared, isn't he? He would never admit it. I mean, Michael knows that if you're guilty, you never say so. So he would never admit that he'd done that on purpose, I wouldn't think. Michael's won a lot of times, and not always because he was the fastest driver.
There was Michael, the racing driver, out on the track, and there was Michael, the human being, away from the track. And I think one of the things that you'll find is I don't know of anyone who worked with Michael who had a bad word to say against him, who worked with him. Lots of people who raced against him had a different opinion, but nobody I know who ever worked with Michael ever had a bad opinion about him because of his integrity, his commitment, his human side. And he was always a very strong team member of any team he was part of.
I have to watch the pictures to see what really went on, because it's difficult to. It went really all in about a second, and suddenly I was up in the air. And I saw him when I was just up in the air. We touched in this moment. I saw him on my side, and then we touched already.
Michael put up a pretty robust defence of his position. Let's put it that way. And I didn't want to win the championship that way, but having experienced everything that went on that year, I thought it was poetic justice.
I have to say that I did make some comments this year that about Damon that I didn't have that kind of respect that I maybe had about somebody else. But I have to admit that I was wrong, because what he has done in the last 2 races in particular, and he must have done even before, has been a proper and fantastic job. And he has been a great rival. For me, it was always clear that I'm not going to win the championship, and it's Ayrton who is going to win the championship. But he hasn't been there for the last races, and I'd like to take this championship and give it to him, because he is the driver who should have earned it. He had the best car, he was the best driver, and that's my feelings about him. It was difficult at the time to show my feelings, because I'm not somebody who likes to show the feelings to the outside. But I always thought about it, and it's the right time now to give something which I achieved, which he should have achieved, to give it to him.
I don't care what anyone says, he raised the bar. He was a naturally athletic person, but he took that side of things to a new level. And the devotion to being part of the team was at a different level than anything I'd ever seen before. You know, he would be the last one out of the paddock at night. You know, he would always want to be the one testing the car. You know, I can remember Maranello days, I'd ring him up and say, Michael, you know, we've got something we really want to check out tomorrow. He said, what time do you want me there? There was never a doubt. He was totally devoted to it, and it's a tragedy what's happened, but he's a lovely human being. I mean, the work he did away from motor racing, which he always kept quiet about, and he's a lovely guy.
Extraordinary Stories on Sky Documentaries, powered by Jaguar.
Every morning at 4:30, you hear the cooks hop on the floor. It's hard times in the mill, my love, hard times in the mill. Every morning at 4:30.
Anne doesn't like Aldi. Here we go.
Well,
You don't like fresh 100% British beef?
We like these award-winning nappies. Yes, we do.
You don't like paying less for your sea bass?
Seems fishy to me.
Or getting more than you bargained for.
Yeah, I like all of that, obviously. I'm just not all that keen on the logo.
Look at you, ignoring the signs. Ooh, how you talked about investing in that tech stock that skyrocketed. But you were just too busy. If only there was an app that could make it easier. Well, there is. eToro. Download today to start investing in the brands you love. Simply choose a stock, set an amount, and hit trade. And because buying stocks is commission-free, you get to keep everything. The whole hog, kid and caboodle, have your cake and eat it. Visit stocks.etoro.com or download the app today. Lovely.
When I'm constipated and need a gentle nudge, I trust Dulco-Ease. It works with your body to soften and get things moving comfortably. For gentle relief, try Dulco-Ease, available in soft gel capsules. And for overnight relief in 6 to 12 hours, try Dulcolax. Dulco works with your body.
We're going up.
50.
Impossible.
What the?
Mum?
She's had her Weetabix.
Have you had your Weetabix?
Scottish Widows.
taking on your future together.
A great night's sleep means a greater day ahead. And as we move forward with a new way of living, getting a good 7 hours is as important as ever. That's why Benson's are offering up to 50% off beds and mattresses, so you can wake fresh and focused, ready to embrace every day. Search Benson's or visit your local store. Sleep well, stay well.
At Glasses Direct, all of these glasses are 2 pairs for £16 with lenses. Get your glasses your way at glassesdirect.co.uk.
They'll have their doubts.
Why don't I want to look at it?
They'll be on edge. But they'll need to face the moment of truth.
In the lap of the gods. Wow! I almost don't want to watch. What the? Amazing.
The body begins to tremble.
Don't panic.
Don't panic.
Portrait Artist of the Year returns Wednesday at 8 on Sky Arts.
Police are looking for Tyler Hagmayer.
He's accused of stabbing a 76-year-old neighbor.
So you've chosen to make a film about this?
I can't not make this movie. If they didn't want to deal with me, they should have murdered someone else's mother-in-law.
Everyone who was supposed to help us worked against us.
We just want to know what happened. All we want to know is the truth.
I had this idea of what a perfect life looked like. What's going on?
Grace, she was found dead.
What? This story will explode.
How well did you know the victim?
Why were you there that night?
Grace, what the devil is going on?
Is he back yet?
How well did you know the victim?
Why were you there that night?
Is he back yet?
I don't want to know.
You don't want to know, or you already do know?
In 97, Jerez. It was a very, very nice venue. It was a nice time of year. It was just a huge event, a huge event. There were a lot of media people around, media controllers, if you like, interviews here, interviews there. Everything was becoming very stage managed in terms of when you could talk to people. So everything was tense. I remember that feeling of agitation.
I came with a very different approach than what they were used to, with setups, with everything. And there's in one test where my engineer did the opposite of what I asked for, just to double check if what I was saying was true or not. And then it took, and within 2 laps I came back in the pit and said, dude, what did you do on the car? It's not what. And from then on, then it was. It went flawlessly. There were some harder moments with Patrick Head because he's hard-headed and he knows what he wants, but there was always so much respect that we could actually work together, and it was great. The car was super fast. It really was a great car to drive. We didn't improve the car as much until halfway through, and Ferrari really made some leaps, gigantic leaps. And at that point, we made leaps as well, and then we just kept working, both them and us. So it made it fun, but we never had a battle on the racetrack until that last race, until Jerez, which was really weird. Or we were never on the podium at the same time, for example. That was really strange. And that year, it was extreme from both sides, and that made it so much fun.
It was just amazing what happened in qualifying with Frentzen, Jacques and Michael. To have 3 drivers recording the same lap time. And it wasn't like the 1950s where it was done down to a 1/10 of a second or a second. This was real stuff. And around Jerez as well, there were enough corners to differentiate between cars and drivers at that level of degree, but it happened.
When I came then in and I looked on the computer, I couldn't believe myself that it was exactly the same time. It proves that competition is on a very high level and can't be closer than that, obviously.
It was just going to be one of those Sundays. You didn't know what was going to happen. You couldn't have had a better palette on which to paint this final round of the championship.
You know, if Schumacher finishes in front of Villeneuve, he will be champion, and if Villeneuve in front of Schumacher, he will be champion.
Schumacher or Villeneuve?
Schumacher, definitely.
Villeneuve.
Everybody wanted to see you and Villeneuve in the front row.
Yeah, correct. There we are.
You happy?
Sure.
How high would you rate the percentage of an accident?
Good question.
I think even the rest want to see a straight fight between Jack and myself, and that's what I want to see. I mean, I want to win the race, and I want to win that way the championship, and not by any kind of accident or whatever. That's not my target.
What do you think will be the key to victory here?
Well, first of all, not being taken off. That will be very important. And then just being fast, being quicker than Michael, that's all.
Oh, I'd say he's in pretty punchy shape. He's confident.
And Michael was 1 point ahead of Jack. Michael was, fantastic driver, had a fantastic career, but there was that side to him which wasn't quite the sportsman.
We are racing. I mean, you cannot predict what is going to happen, but we want to fight on the circuit as good as possible and as fair as possible. That's the intention.
When you want to win a championship, it takes more than just driving fast.
There'd been some gamesmanship going on during the race between ourselves and Williams, and I seem to remember the Williams second driver was blocking us. I mean, I'm not complaining because we were masters at that, so don't get me wrong.
Jacques Villeneuve, Michael, last Grand Prix in Jerez, they had a massive fight. Michael has to win.
The last thing Michael wanted to see was a closing gap, the gap behind getting smaller and smaller with Jacques catching him. And Jacques in a position to catch him under brakes.
I think we had a better car, but in the end, Michael moved over on Jacques and tried to knock him off.
He's putting the car where it should be, and Michael just shuts the door on him.
And Jacques went through, and it was a mistake by Michael. He shouldn't have done it.
Michael went off. Jacques was able to continue, but I think Jacques understood that way. There's no point to push anymore, and I think he was not sure anymore if the car was okay because they touched.
That was, a bit cynical looking at it, as had been the end of the championship at 94 with Damon in Adelaide. And quite clearly, Michael, when Jack challenged him at Jerez, Michael decided to take him out.
Interestingly, when he came back in the pits, he had a completely different mental view of what had happened. And it wasn't until he saw the TV he realized what had really happened. And I think, again, you're in the cockpit, you've got the helmet on, things are happening around you, you act instinctively. And Michael's final failure mode was to act instinctively to defend a position. He was so competitive, that's what he did. And he came back to the pits and he was telling us we had to get Villeneuve disqualified and all the rest of it. I said, Michael, you really need to look at the TV because it doesn't look that way, I'm afraid. And he looked and he went quiet and realized that things hadn't been quite how he thought they were from the cockpit.
Jack was in truth very lucky because that impact on the car broke the battery mounting on which the car depended. Very small battery. And when the car finished, we found that it was hanging by its electrical wires. The bracket that mounted it was completely broken. Very close behind Jack was Harkinen and Coulthard.
I come in flat out with David, and it was a last lap, third last corner. I overtook Jack, and it was a terrible feeling because I knew that way if something goes wrong, and I crashed with him one way or other reason, you know, it would be a catastrophe. But I think Jack let me to go, basically. He didn't want to fight at all. And I got the first victory. It was brilliant.
I was filled with anger after that race because Ron Dennis had come along to Frank and said to him, look, if Jacques in a position to win the championship, will you let us win the race?
For Mika Happen and for McLaren, that was a fantastic day. Yeah, it's quite good, really. I think a clean race.
Why Ron felt that he needed to ask a favour of Frank, or why Frank felt that he needed to give McLaren a favour. Because after that accident, Jacques was in the lead, and Frank called me over, he was in his wheelchair in the garage, and said we were to slow Jacques down and let the two McLarens overtake us. And I said, Frank, there's no way we should give up a race win, because I could see that McLaren was sort of on the up. And Frank said, no, I've promised Ron will do that, and he instructed me to tell Jacques to let the McLarens by, which I'm sure he'd probably had a word with Jacques before the race. So I was absolutely livid. I was seething with anger.
I wasn't really surprised when he finally decided to turn in on me. The way he hit me was really, really hard. I'm surprised that I could actually finish the race.
I think the whole race was interesting from start to finish.
From a team point of view, delighted that we've had a 1-2. I think we had a little bit of help from Jack in the end, and Jack led him through at the chicane.
I braked on the maximum, and he braked even later, which, as I said, with this braking point, I wouldn't have made the corner, and he wouldn't have made the corner.
You know, I couldn't go more on the inside. I was actually on the grass. So, you know, either Michael had his eyes closed or somehow his hands slid on the steering or something.
Quite honest, I probably would have done the same. That's about racing.
It was interesting that Michael spent a lot of time with Jacques in the motorhome, and they were together hanging out. And Michael was very relaxed and very on top of his life and what would happen that day. And I think in that sense, it became a racing sporting incident as distinct from something bigger than that was going to affect Formula One or be bigger than the individuals of Formula One. Where I think I say that in the context of Ayrton Alain, where it did get to that point. I think it was contained because Michael kind of did a pretty good job after the race.
We fly into Spa and we're greeted with the usual Spa weather. It was atrocious conditions. I mean, it really was shocking.
Spa is often a pretty challenging track because of the weather. You know, it can be raining on one half of the track and dry on the other. I love it, actually. I love Spa. And Michael used to love Spa. You know, it was where he started his Formula 1 career.
It's like you're driving with your eyes closed in a fog. You just couldn't see anything. I couldn't see 2 meters ahead of my car. When I saw it, cars crashing all over the place, I tried to stop. I couldn't stop because it's too wet, and just hit all of them.
Coulthard came off the wide part of the track, and there's like a metal railing there, and there's no grip, and he just lost it, went into the wall, and then I slowed down to avoid hitting him, and people just kept hitting me.
I was right behind David Coulthard, and he hit a drain or a bump in the road, and it flipped him round into the wall, and I had to decide whether I was going to go for the rebound, try and get past him on the rebound, or try and go through the gap where he's going to leave when he... I can't remember what I did, but it was carnage. I mean, it was absolute carnage.
I was so careful, I was so concentrated to escape from other cars, and I was just lucky. Yeah?
I hadn't made a good start, so it was a good thing we had a restart. But it was an hour after I was sitting in the car, so basically I was dying for a pee, but I didn't want to get out. I just sat in the car for a whole hour. I was freezing.
When you start a race in the lead in the wet, you look in your mirrors and all you can see is spray. So the people behind can't see, but you can't see who's behind you either. So all I knew was I was going off like a cat out of hell and trying to get as much of a gap as I could on the opening laps, and I had no idea what was happening behind me. Well, of course, driving in those perilous conditions, it's a strange mixture of being terrified and at the same time exhilarated. And I think those two things combine to make you focus and concentrate in a way that you wouldn't ordinarily do, is what racing drivers really love doing. I like driving in the wet. I like the car moving. I like to be able to feel it sliding around and looking for the traction.
Michael was just superlative in the wet. He was on a different planet to everyone else. He was dominating the race completely.
Michael Schumacher hits David Coulthard and is out of the Belgian Grand Prix. Maybe he should have been a bit more circumspect about trying to pass him, but he is out.
It ended, unfortunately, with a clash with Coulthard. And I think the frustration was not so much the accident happening then, but in our view, there had been opportunities for McLaren to strike Coulthard to let Michael pass on other parts of the track, which would have been logical, safe, and easy to do. And instead, they just thought they'd irritate us a bit, I'm sure, and they'd just prod us a little bit. And Michael was lapping Coulthard. It was a non-event, really. And then David had instructions, and he finally backed off in the middle of the corner, which was disastrous. And that's why Michael was so upset, because it was a manoeuvre in a corner he didn't expect. There'd been opportunities before for Michael to go past. He was lapping a car. We can all say he should have backed off and sort of done it at another spot, but you don't expect a driver to back off in the middle of a corner.
It was unfortunate. I could see why Michael was unhappy. I know David's rationale, which was, right, I'm in trouble. I think I'm safer staying here on the racing line where people would expect to find me.
It's easy to assume that Michael was just angry at David Coulthard for doing something deliberate, but I don't think David was doing anything deliberately at all. I think he perhaps could have been a little bit off the line.
I have this image of him running down the pit lane with Stefano Domenicali chasing him. He got so irate and wanted to flatten David. Emotions were running high that day.
I went to him and asked him whether he wanted to kill me, because that is a very, very dangerous maneuver. It has been done, and as experienced as David is, he should know that running in this condition, you should never lift on the straight without giving any kind of chance for the driver behind to see that. Instead of being 3 points in front, we're 7 points behind. That's very disappointing.
He's run in the back of me, and I think his accusations of me trying to, drive him off circuit, whatever, are just ridiculous. His words there were you trying to kill me? And I think that is disgusting behaviour for someone who's got such a good record in terms of his Formula One career. To drop into such an animalistic type aggression is mind-boggling. If Michael wants to discuss with me man-to-man the incident, then I'm more than happy to discuss it, and I sympathise with the fact that he's lost his 10 points, and that was not his intention, of course, and it wasn't my intention. But to have this sort of outburst is very worrying for everyone on the circuit. And he's made the mistake, not me.
I was David's manager. So when I was commentating and saw Michael trying to punch him, I was probably thinking, don't damage my client. I don't know who'd have won that fight if they'd have got going. It would have been quite a good fight to watch, actually.
During the race, I had a big crash because Nakano was going into the pit. There was no visibility at all. And the braking point for the pits was much earlier, a few years ago, so he braked quite a lot, and I was still on full throttle position, and I crashed into his car. It was a bad accident. Yeah.
Michael is out. Michael is out. You're leading the race. You're leading the race. Michael is out.
Not having been able to command a team before in my life, I thought now's the time to try and ask Eddie Jordan if he didn't mind, please, just having a word with the guy behind me, who happened to be my teammate, to make sure that he didn't do anything stupid and that would lead to neither of us finishing when we could both have a 1-2.
You cannot overtake Damon. Okay, that is team order. You cannot overtake Damon. You heard me before, didn't you, Ralph, about overtaking Damon? You heard that, didn't you? Ralph, acknowledge. Yes, Sam.
Eddie came back with, OK, he's going to stay second place and stuff. I just thought, he's not going to obey team orders, forget it. I legged it, and he couldn't catch me, and Ralph had to stay ahead of John Lacey anyway, so
I think we were all going flat out.
And Damon Hill wins in Belgium. Fantastic!
we got a 1-2.
Eddie was ecstatic, the team were ecstatic. All the people who had come from the factory went away having watched their team win the race. Nobody expected a Jordan to win a Grand Prix. It was one of my most satisfying victories, if not the most satisfying victory, actually, in some ways, because it was so difficult.
That was a fantastic day. It was a great team effort, and to think that we finished first and second in a race here at Spa, it's a very big day. Damon has won before, and this was a race that possibly Ralph felt that he had a chance to win, but he had to understand that it was better to defend the position with Alessi gaining on us or whatever. So from that point of view, both drivers did a stunning job. Damon knows how to win, and he was just so happy for the team because he will always be in history as winning 22 Grand Prix, but he'll be in history for being Jordan's first winner.
If you add in the hour delay, and the time before the first start, I think I was in the car for about 4 hours. So when I got out and I stood on the podium, I was trying to do my victory leap. Part of me was thinking, oh my God, I don't think I could do that again. Really, seriously, that sucked out quite a lot out of me.
Extraordinary Stories on Sky Documentaries, powered by Jaguar.